Hey everyone, this is Kalegi with Tim Moore reminding you that SportsSpeak is now powered by SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the one-stop shop for tickets to sporting events, concerts, and so much more.
Use the promo code SportsSpeak at checkout for $20 off your first purchase.
SeatGeek, let there be live. Now, on to the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of SportsSpeak, powered by SeatGeek, episode 139. I'm Kalegi. Tim Moore is going to be joining us in just a few minutes. Tristan Biesel is with us today. We have a lot to talk about. We're going to get to the NBA. We didn't get to talk about it the last couple of episodes, but the season is done, and already some big offseason moves happening. The draft only about 48 hours away. NFL, of course, you see that Packers logo behind Tristan. Got to get his thoughts on how Jordan Love and the Packers are going to perform this season, and also the Chicago Cubs and some other baseball topics as well. But let's go to the NBA before we look at the big trade. Let's just finish up the season. I mean, the Nuggets, I think it was kind of expected with the way the team was performing down the stretch. They were going to get it done. They were against an 8 seed. As great as Miami's run was, they just didn't have the firepower against the Nuggets. Jokic, absolutely elite down the stretch this year. And Denver wins a championship. They were due for a big playoff run. They've been trying to get it for a few years, and now it finally happens. And now the question is, can they build on this and carry on for the next couple of years? The West is stacked, but for now, all that really matters is the Nuggets won a title, and really great to see for Jokic and Murray and the rest of them to get it done and make it through a really tough Western Conference this year and then win the title over Miami.
Yeah, definitely. And my friend's a Miami Heat fan, and I was telling him during the Boston series that once they were up 3-0, I was like, you guys either need to sweep or win in 5 to have a shot at even going up against Denver. Because Denver had swept LA and they were going to be on a lengthy rest period. And the Heat needed the same thing. I mean, once they got into elevation, they were gassed, and then they just didn't have enough going down the last couple of games. Jokic, like you said, absolutely elite. Jamal Murray was elite too, and their depth was also a key point. We talked about the entire playoffs about the Heat's depth, but when it was them versus Denver, depth for depth, bench for bench, Denver came out on top. I mean, I saw that you tweeted during Game 5 that one, I think it was the Aaron Gordon call on Jimmy Butler. Mm-hmm. It was horrible.
Yes.
I had my friend who's a Nuggets fan on the phone during that, and he was like, "Is that a foul?" I was like, "No, but you guys are gonna win anyways. It's okay. It's okay."
Yeah, that was an awful call.
No, definitely. And you were talking about, can they keep it up? I think they can, especially with the East being as top heavy, and not even top heavy. It's just 4 teams. It's Boston, Philadelphia, Milwaukee, and Miami. Those are your 4 surefire teams that could go all the way. I mean, there's some young teams like the Knicks, the Hawks, maybe, depending on what they do with Trae Young, and the Cavs. Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland are an A1 duo, but it's just those teams aren't ready yet, and the 4 teams that I mentioned are the teams that are going to be going all the way.
Yeah, they're really above the rest, and Miami is certainly there as well. And the most impressive thing too is that Bam Adebayo had a pretty good NBA Finals. Jokic just was that much better. And like you said, and like I tweeted about it too during Game 5 when they sealed it up, as much as we love to talk about all the undrafted guys for Miami and not to discredit them, they all had phenomenal postseasons, but it was those role players for Denver who ended up being the ones who really stepped up at the end. KCP, who now wins his 2nd ring. Bruce Brown, who was with the Nets a couple of years ago, gets a ring. Those 2 were the catalysts when Denver was able to rally back at the end of Game 5 and win that game when Jimmy Butler got hot in the 4th quarter. So Jokic and Murray deserve most of the credit, but those guys too really contributed, and it was a full team effort for the whole year. But now we look at next season, and the Phoenix Suns have made an interesting move. We'll say it like that a couple of days ago. So they trade for Bradley Beal. They're finalizing it, but it seems like it's going to happen. Bradley Beal is going to be a Phoenix Sun. Going back to Washington is going to be Chris Paul, who's probably going to be flipped to a contender, Landry Shamet, and picks. So Phoenix did get sort of a discount. They didn't have to give up that much. The era with Chris Paul just wasn't going all that well, but I just don't know how this is going to work. First of all, Phoenix now has so much money committed to 4 players Beal, Booker, Durant, and Ayton, they're going to literally have everybody on veterans minimums on their bench. And one injury can really derail them. And these are a lot of injury prone players, especially Bradley Beal. And the one thing that I just don't understand how this is going to work, at least when we've seen these big threes and these people pairing up, they don't have the exact same skills. Durant, Booker, and Beal are all very similar players, especially Booker and Beal. They shoot, they score, and that's pretty much it. They don't do much else. They don't defend. They don't pass the ball that much. They're not big rebounders. They're scorers. So I just don't know how you're going to share the ball with those guys and Durant, and you're going to have Ayton there, and then that's pretty much your whole team. And again, one injury can completely derail things. So to me, I don't really see how this helps Phoenix that much. I know I would have rather, if I would have the Suns, I would have liked to trade Chris Paul for maybe 2 role players that you could slide in. Maybe one's a starter and just have a little more depth instead of adding Bradley Beal, who essentially is a less talented version of Devin Booker, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I was talking with my friends about the trade, and I was like you said, it's going to be 4 guys that are going to be taking up all the money. And what do you do when you have KD, Devin Booker, and now Bradley Beal, who are all top level scorers, but they got to have the ball in their hands? And Chris Paul's going to get flipped. I don't know why I understand why you would include him in that package, but what's the point of trading him to Washington if Washington's just going to flip him to a contender for depth pieces and picks, which is something that Phoenix could have gotten for Chris Paul.
Yeah. And then the whole thing, the other weird part of this was DeAndre Ayton. So the Wizards wanted DeAndre Ayton, and that's why I think there may have been a consideration of doing this trade without Chris Paul being involved. And maybe they could have done a separate deal with Chris Paul. And then the Suns were the ones who said no about DeAndre Ayton. Well, I thought ownership in Phoenix was the ones who didn't like DeAndre Ayton. This is the same DeAndre Ayton who seemed to kind of give up down the stretch this year and is not the same caliber of center as some of these other centers in the West, namely Jokic, but there's other ones who have really sort of manhandled Ayton lately, and he has not really turned out to be as good as he was coming in as a prospect. I mean, he's a serviceable starting center, but he's not elite by any standards. So I'm kind of surprised that Phoenix are the ones that said no and didn't want to include Ayton in this deal.
Exactly. And like you said, ownership didn't want Ayton. Why don't you I think you would have gotten more of a haul if you had put Ayton and Paul in there. You still would have gotten Bradley Beal, but you would have gotten a lot more picks, and you could have gotten maybe 2 or 3 bench pieces. Because I don't really like the essentially a 1-of-1 trade for Chris Paul and Bradley Beal. I feel like Bradley Beal is just a younger Chris Paul, injury prone, needs the ball in his hands to score, but can't defend.
Yeah.
And Washington's not going to do anything with Chris Paul. They're just going to flip him to a contender. I think he goes back to the Clippers.
I think that's what we're trending towards. I mean, he's going to be in LA in some way. I could see the Lakers try to make a move for him. He's going to be either a Laker or a Clipper. And I saw some people talking, like on First Take, they were saying, could the Clippers bring in both Chris Paul and Russell Westbrook and have Russell Westbrook be the 6th man? I mean, that's straight chaos, because then you have Chris Paul, Kawhi, Paul George, and Russell Westbrook on the same team. But Chris Paul is going to be playing for a contender. I also think it's funny how just these washed point guards end up going to the same teams. Like Russell Westbrook, John Wall, and Chris Paul have now all played for the Rockets, the Clippers, and the Wizards over the last 5 years. Like they're just rotating between these same teams. And I don't think Chris Paul's career is necessarily, I don't think Chris Paul's career is necessarily over, but there's not much left in the tank there. He's 38 years old. He really took a step back this past year, and he's gotten hurt late in the season the last 2 years. So he could be helpful to a contender, but I'd almost like to see him maybe in a 6th man role for a team that already has an established point guard. Like, I think him not having to carry as much of the load and kind of work with younger guys. We saw how well Chris Paul works with younger players that year when he was sort of an outcast of a trade with the Thunder the season when they were in the bubble, and they made a decent run. It was Chris Paul and a bunch of young guys that made it, and they ended up getting the 5 seed in the playoffs. That was a good year for him. I think if he went to a similar situation as that, a team with some young pieces that kind of needs a veteran leader, it could work. With the Lakers or the Clippers, the Lakers are going to be way too dependent on him. And then what's going to happen is he's not going to play well. And then all the fans are going to blame him just like they blamed Russell Westbrook over the last 2 years. And then with the Clippers, you're getting to a situation, we're talking about health with the Suns. Then you got Chris Paul, Kawhi, and Paul George, who all get
Kawhi
hurt
might
at
not
the
play
time.
again.
Yeah, it's even worse. And then you still have Russell Westbrook on that roster. So he's probably going to end up on one of those two teams, but I don't think either one's really a good fit for him.
I don't think so either. And I can agree on your point with the Lakers, especially since we don't know what's going on with Anthony Davis. Chris Paul is going to be a starting point guard for the Lakers next year. And it's going to be up to him and LeBron to score most of the team's points. When you have LeBron, who's like on the fence about retirement from what we were hearing, after they got swept. But I don't believe it. He wants to play a year with Bronny. Doesn't matter where, it's going to happen. And if you want to trade Chris Paul to a team with a bunch of young pieces and need a veteran voice, you just keep him in Washington. You just either keep him in Washington or trade him to another team in the East that needs a veteran piece. I mean, like, he could go to the Cavs. There's not a true standalone veteran. Like a true, like, old head type voice on that team. Cleveland could use him. And he wouldn't be used as much with Mitchell and Garland. He could be a 6-man on that roster. Anywhere else you send him to, he's not going to be. And he's 38, and I think his best is behind him. And if he wants to win a ring, he should have done it in the 2020-21 season when he fell to my Bucks in 6.
Now, the other topic before the deadline, of course, there's going to be a lot of moving pieces free agency this year. What's happening with Kyrie Irving? Is James Harden leaving Philly? Draymond Green opted out of his contract with Golden State. But the one other interesting thing here are the New Orleans Pelicans, who there are rumors that they want to trade Zion Williamson. Now, Zion's only played 114 games in 4 years. I'm not going to call him Greg Oden, but I mean, he has not been healthy and he has not played that much over these 4 years. And he's talented. He sure is, but he's just not available on the floor at all. And his injuries always spiral into what's supposed to be a 2 or 3 week thing. Then he's out 6 months. Like, it's not working out for him. And even his 1 year at Duke, he was injury prone. So as talented as he is, it's like his body really can't take the NBA intensity for 6 to 8 months. And the Pelicans have a good roster right now, and they had a great season, even with Zion missing most of it this past year. So we're recording this on Tuesday afternoon. As of right now, Zion has not been dealt, but there are rumors, people from the league saying that they expect a Zion move to happen before draft day on Thursday. Now you have teams that may try to move an early pick. Charlotte and Portland both have high level picks. Yeah. I could see one of those things possibly happening.
Yeah, no, I've been hearing Charlotte most of the week, and I think that would be the easy move. But you're just giving Charlotte a guy who's probably going to be hurt after the first couple months. He, like you said, he can't handle a 6 to 8 month NBA load. And for how touted of a prospect he was coming in when he was drafted out of Duke, get it. Granted, he was injury prone when he was at Duke too, but the talent was there. And now you've got him being in a scandal with Mariah Mills. It's bad rep for a team in New Orleans who really doesn't need it and really doesn't need Zion with how good they performed last year without him. And that's a really tough thing. That's a really tough thing to admit when you put in all that time and that investment over these past 4 seasons into Zion. But you just got to admit when the trains run out of gas and Zion's time in New Orleans is trending downwards very fastly. And I think he'll be dealt with in the next 24 hours.
Yeah. And it's funny because, like I said, they have a good team right now with Brandon Ingram as the centerpiece of that. They have some young talent. That's a good roster. They looked good in the play-in tournament this year. I think this is a team where if you move Zion and say get a pick and you could maybe draft Scoot Henderson, I think that could really, really help you out. Brandon Miller, with all of the baggage off the court, I wouldn't really want to bring him in. But Scoot Henderson is someone who I think could really bolster that team. Tim Moore has arrived. His trip to the grocery store is complete, so we have him now for some baseball and football talk. But Tim, before we do that, we were just discussing what happened with Phoenix and the Bradley Beal deal, and how both of us aren't really a big fan of this for either team, and we have no idea what's going to happen now with Chris Paul. And Beal and Booker essentially do the exact same thing on the court. So do you think there's any way this actually works for the Suns?
You know what? To be honest with you, I think it does work a little bit better for the Suns because think about it. Bradley Beal is a scorer. That's what the Suns need, in my opinion, is more efficient scoring. And Chris Paul, listen, he's an excellent passer. I understand he's regressing, he's getting older, still looking for that elusive title. But if you really do think about it on paper, there's a massive upside in regards to having Bradley Beal because it's a much more ideal spot for longevity as compared to Chris Paul. And yes, I know the passing ability isn't there, but the point is that I get it. You can't really have two dominant scorers on the floor. But when you think about it from perspective, if Bradley Beal can just average 18 points a game, 20 points a game, that's already a big improvement from Chris Paul. You mix that in, of course, with everybody else. I mean, Kevin Durant is, his own specimen, as they like to say. He's, unique in his own way. And you look at Devin Booker. I mean, to be honest with you, I really think D-Book could play more facilitating type of a point guard if he really wanted to adapt to. Similar to like, and to be honest with you, think about Donovan Mitchell as he transitioned to Cleveland, right? We saw the assist numbers start going up immediately. He played a lot better and was a lot more involved when he played the one as compared to the two. I think Devin Booker, of course, one thing about Devin Booker, to be honest with you, too, now that I'm thinking about it, his shooting percentages and field goal percentages also really, more often than not, matched one of a point guard as compared to a shooting guard, statistically speaking. So with that being said, I can understand why you don't like it as much because certain assets and so on, but I think this is a massive upgrade for Phoenix. Now, is it a downgrade defensively? I think that's fair to say. I think Chris Paul is a better defender than Bradley Beal, but I feel Phoenix needs to be more effective scoring the basketball if they're going to want to win a championship. They weren't consistent enough when it came to the playoffs. So I think Bradley Beal is a huge, huge step for them. And I hope Chris Paul lands somewhere as well that he'll be wanted, to win a title. Probably going to end up being the Clippers, I would imagine, would be his next landing spot. But I think it's going to be a lot more positive than what we think it is. But again, might I remind you, the last time we saw all these incredible scorers put together, aka the Brooklyn Nets, Kevin Durant, right, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, everything fell apart in less than a year. So maybe that happens in Phoenix. I don't know.
Yeah, and the thing is, too, at least the Nets situation, at least Kyrie is a point guard. You have two shooting guards and Kevin Durant, who is a scorer. That's my whole problem here. Yeah, I mean, I know their scoring was a problem during the playoffs, but that's not really based on roster construction. That's simply the fact that Kevin Durant and Devin Booker underperformed in the second round of the playoffs. And, Bradley Beal is not necessarily battle tested in the postseason. He's had one postseason series in the last 7 years, and it was with Russell Westbrook on the team. So it's really just difficult to really assess this. And the other thing we talked about earlier was just where Phoenix is at financially now, because you have these three guys plus Ayton who they seem like they want to keep. You have barely any money to spend for the bench right now. It's going to be a bunch of guys on veterans minimums, and you have both Durant and Beal who are very injury prone. One sprained ankle can derail everything, and you don't have a point guard. So that's my real concerns there. But let's transition to baseball for a little bit, guys. Tristan, I'll go to your Cubs first. Now, the NL Central is not good. Neither is the AL Central. But there are, I think, more bright spots in the NL side than the AL side because the Reds are putting things together. That team, I really like that team right now. They just brought back Joey Votto from injury as the veteran presence, and Ellie De La Cruz, I think, is going to be a future superstar. The Pirates got off to a good start. They've started to cool off, but with Mitch Keller and company, they've looked pretty good to start the season, even with O'Neal Cruz hurt. Cardinals have been bad. Brewers have been iffy, but the Cubs have been pretty good too. And I said this to you off the air. I think the team right now, that's a team that could go on a run because you have guys who have performed in the playoffs before on the roster, like Dansby Swanson and Cody Bellinger. You got young talent. They're finally using Christopher Morel. So right now, how do you assess the Cubs? And do you think this is a team that could win the division when it's all said and done?
I'm not saying that we could win the division. I think that it's going to be between the Reds and the Brewers, maybe the Pirates, because the Reds are getting hot. They called up Ellie De La Cruz at the right time. Joey Votto's back. And yes, friends, Joey Votto still bangs. And I just don't think that we're there yet. After we saw what happened, once Bellinger went out, it was like a rotation of Tauchman and Morel, where I think Morel would be best at third. But no, we got to have Miles. I have a lower batting average than Eric Hosmer, and he's been off the team for a month. Master Bloney at the 9-hole on a daily basis. And the pitching rotation, I mean, sure, Stroman's probably second in NL Cy Young voting right now behind Zach Gallen. You have Drew Smyly, Kyle Hendricks, a little bit iffy, but he's starting to warm up a little bit. Justin Steele's coming back, and he's shoved in his last outing. Even though he was limited to 60 pitches, it's just, what do you do with that 5? Is it going to be Tyone? Is it going to be Wesneski? It's just those two guys I'm just not that confident in. And it's not as significant as an issue as it was in the earlier part of the season, the bullpen management. I think David Ross has finally realized that it's either going to be Leiter or Alzolay that are going to be in that closing spot. And you can just swap those two guys at setup because I don't like Michael Fulmer in high leverage spots. We saw that in the Dodgers series. We saw that in the Astro series earlier on in May. But Alzolay is really coming into his own as a guy who can be the closer. But Leiter's also got something to prove to you. Now, the lineup itself is also very good. You got to figure out what you're going to do with catcher. Is it going to be Gomes? Is it going to be Amaya? Is it going to be Barnhart? I almost screamed at the top of my lungs. I think it was the first Orioles game, and Barnhart almost hit one out because bro doesn't hit. He can't make contact with the ball. I mean, sure, Gold Glove defender, but you can get that out of Yan Gomes. You can get that out of Miguel Amaya. First base is probably going to be locked down by Cody Bellinger until he's ready to play center. Once Mervis got sent down, it was probably going to be the move. Now you probably put Mancini back at first once Belly's ready to go back to center. But having Morel at third, especially with Wisdom on the IL right now, is the better move. I think that's where Morel's best fit defensively. And if the team can just stay lukewarm hitting, you don't have to be Reds level of hot every day. Just be consistent. And the bats have not been consistent. Dansby was a lot more patient in the first half of the season so far. It's a tale of two halves. And then now it's just Dansby's swinging a lot. Dansby's swinging a lot now. Lots of swing and miss. His slugging percentage has gone down. His hard hit rate's gone down. But now we're starting to put more pieces together and have a more well-oiled lineup. It just depends who's starting that day to determine how the rest of the game's going to go. Because Stroman has been pitching beautifully.
Yeah, I have been really impressed with Marcus Stroman this year. I mean, Kyle Hendricks at times too, but Stroman has been really impressive. I don't think anybody saw that coming because it seemed like after his Mets tenure, Cubs was going to be like an outpost for him, but he's really performed.
And extend the man, Jed. If you're listening to me, extend him. I beg. I can't get on my knees because I'd fall out of shot, but please extend the man. He wants to stay here. He loves the team. Pay the man. You just paid Ian Happ. You got Cody Bellinger on a lucky 1-year prove-it contract, essentially. You got Mancini, who's a good glove, decent bat, but you need pitching help. And if you aren't going to extend Marcus Stroman, you're doing something wrong because you have a guy who wants to stay and loves the team, loves the city. Let the man stay and let the
Well,
man continue to shove.
yeah, and I think it's also an opportunity kind of to right the wrongs of what happened a couple years ago because, Baez, Bryant, and Rizzo, all of them liked being in Chicago. And the fact that you couldn't keep any of the three, I know you traded them, but there were rumors like with Rizzo that maybe you were going to sign him after you had dealt him that following offseason, and that didn't happen. Now you've actually recovered very well now from really just selling off your full 2016 team in just 2 years now to have a pretty good roster. So take advantage of what you have. Tim, now that you're here, I think we
Do
should
I
talk.
have to talk about the Yankees?
Yes, you have to talk about the
Yes,
Yankees. I've been
yes.
waiting for this.
I'm in the mood because it's been a bit, and the last time we did baseball, we just focused on the Mets. I don't really have much to say about the Mets today. The
I've been
Yankees,
waiting for
though,
this all day.
now
For this.
something that you'll be excited about, Tim. I'm leaving for work in a couple of hours in Somerset, and your favorite pitcher, Carlos Rodon, is on a rehab assignment there tonight.
I thought you were going to tell me that you have more hits than the Yankees have had in like last month, but
I probably do.
you probably do. Where do I even start with this team? I know I had my meltdown game 2 of the season, but I legitimately can't watch 9 innings of Yankees baseball anymore without being disappointed. Father's Day was a disappointment against Boston. Not even getting swept. Listen, I understand Boston's a lot better than any last place team in the history of baseball. The only thing, to be honest with you, holding Boston back from being a serious playoff contender is an inconsistent bottom end of the rotation and an inconsistent bullpen. But yet the Yankees bats make them pretty much feel like they're facing Nolan Ryan all 27 outs of a game. It's horrendous that Nick Pivetta looks like he's Cy Young out there. Only allowed 2 hits, I think it was, in game 1 after the starter came out on Father's Day. And then again, you score 1 run on the top of the first inning. Really should add 2 runs in the top of the first inning on Sunday Night Baseball. And the Yankees never came close to scoring a run after. All this proves that I'm tired of this patience bullcrap that Brian Cashman and Aaron Boone keep on talking about. Oh, the bat's going to turn around. It's just our big bats not getting going. Listen, I understand that Giancarlo Stanton's cold when he's hurt. I get that, and he needs time to come back. But he's batting a 211. Anthony Rizzo was batting a 300 a month ago. He is 4 for 52 in the month of June. 4 for 52. If you do the math, I think that's what, a .040, something like that. It's horrendous. It's below a 100. It's not even close to Mendoza line. DJ LeMahieu is so bad now. And he was the one person I said, man, if he signed that 5-year deal, I wouldn't be upset if he didn't perform. But this is a brand new low for DJ LeMahieu. He can't put the bat on the ball. He's striking out. He's batting at 230. Anthony Volpe is horrendous. I'm sorry. I don't care if he could steal 15, 16 bases like he's done at this point in the season perfectly. His value is not equivalent to a Trey Turner or Xander Bogaerts, who, by the way, Trey Turner isn't really having that good of a season, but it's still better than half of the New York Yankees. Listen, Bowers, I guess, is doing a good job in right field, getting in the batting average and somehow being the Yankees' leadoff hitter. But if you're not him or Gleyber Torres, no, you're not performing right now. The Yankees got rid of Aaron Hicks. Aaron Hicks is tearing it up in Baltimore. He's horrible. Joey Gallo's horrible, but they're having better seasons than half of the New York Yankees offense.
It's the facial hair. I'm telling you, it's the facial hair.
It's the facial hair. It is. I agree. Beards are a big thing. Remember Mike Napoli when he ranked in Boston? Oh, God, was that 2013 World Series? 2013 after the Boston bombing. I remember the big beard, him and Big Poppy. It was a great time to be a fan of baseball back then. But when I look at this Yankees team, it's just nobody can hit. Nobody can do anything consistently. And the starting rotation, Carlos Rodon or not, is a mess. Absolute mess. After Derek Cole, who, by the way, you know the year where Jacob deGrom won Cy Young and he had a below 500 record, and it was the whole debate. I am surprised that Garrett Cole is a winning pitcher in baseball right now, because I cannot recall, except maybe two outings for him at this point in the season where he has run support of more than one run. It feels like Garrett Cole has to pitch like his life depends on it every time he comes on the mound, and knows that if he allows a run or the Yankees go behind, he will not win a game. And he only has one loss this season. But Garrett Cole's been phenomenal. Everything after that, listen, I know Nestor Cortez is hurt. He'll be fine when he comes back. But Clark Schmidt, Aaron Boone's trying to sell, he's growing in front of our eyes. Some guy with a mid-4 ERA is not good. I'm sorry. The Yankees bullpen, I will say, far surpassed expectations. I'm glad they signed Tommy Kahnle, and I'm glad he's back and he's healthy. There is not a single pitcher with 10-plus outings that is above a 4 ERA. So I can't complain about the bullpen, unlike last year. But it's frustrating. The rotation, Luis Severino looks like he's throwing batting practice out there. I wish we didn't bring him back. Carlos Rodon, like you said, still hasn't thrown an inning. But overall, when I look at this team, man, I just can't stand it. It's inconsistent. We are the worst above 500 team I've ever seen in baseball. And I really hope we don't make the playoffs. Because the day the New York Yankees will be changed for good is the day Brian Cashman gets fired. And Aaron Boone, as I said this in past episodes, he's been set up for failure. In the past, it was Boone's fault, yes. I don't blame Aaron Boone for this. I really don't. This is all on Brian Cashman not being able to assemble a decent enough ball club. And the results we're seeing is the honest-to-God results of what this team actually is, which is an absolute laughingstock of baseball, considering the fact that you're battling for the last spot in the wild card right now with the Houston frickin' Astros, who won the World Series last year. By the way, 2 more World Series than the Yankees have won in, I don't know, the last 13, 14 years.
Yeah, I know, but the Astros and Dodgers have been just as bad as the Yankees. I mean, I know my perspective is different, and we always get into these debates. Like, I'd be happy if I was in the position the Yankees were right now with the Mets. Like,
the Mets are devastating, right? But my is more of how many times can you be considered an essential title contender every season and you don't come close? You just don't. You could say the ALCS is close, but when you lose in 4 games to the Astros, that's not close to me. You couldn't even take 1 game. Yeah, you played 7 games. What is that, 4 or 5 years ago to this point? 6 years ago? 2017? That's a long time ago. The Yankees are title favorite every year, and they're not coming close. And they're not getting better. Old veterans, 30-plus years old, that can't hit near 300 are not going to help the Yankees. It needs to be people that are good bat-on-ball hitters and can extend bases. Guys like, for example, Anthony Volpe has the tools, doesn't hit for average. That was my criticism of him in the minor leagues. The power is great, doesn't do anything for me. Big Bowers, what he's doing right now is great, but he's not going to hit like that forever. That's the reason why I hope, and I think he's active today, if I'm not mistaken. Harrison Bader comes back.
Harrison Bader is back today.
If he continues doing what he did before he got hurt, great. But he was also batting, a 240 before he got hurt?
Yep.
Doesn't do it for me. But that's a high batting average with all standards considered for the Yankees.
I saw a stat, and we'll leave the baseball conversation on this. There's one team that's batting under 200 in the month of June as a team, and that's the New York Yankees.
And Oakland Athletics.
Yep. Our 2 favorite teams.
I took the liberty of crunching the numbers real quick, and Anthony Rizzo is batting a .076 in the month of June.
That's not good. That's
Will Benson numbers.
That's Bartolo Colon numbers. Now, Tim talked about how he thinks the Yankees might not make the playoffs. We'll finish the last 2 minutes with an NFL team who did not make the playoffs last year, the Green Bay Packers. So I see the flag behind you. We got 2 minutes here, Tristan. Jordan Love, how confident are you in him and this Packers team heading into 2023?
Not confident. I think this is a 7-10 ball club in all but games played only. I haven't had the sample size to make a true judgment on Jordan Love just yet.
Can I ask you how you feel about the troll job Jordan Love just did on Father's Day to the Bears, basically saying that the Bears are his daddy?
We're going to lose by 50 in each game now.
You know what? He got a little mixed up. He tried to make a joke seem funny, and he missed the punchline.
I don't care. We're going to get pwned by Chicago. We're going to get pwned by Minnesota. We're going to get pwned by Detroit in Detroit, but we're going to blow Detroit out by 50. Zoe's delusional for thinking that the Lions are going to win the division. They're not going to. They're not there. Jameson Williams decided to be Calvin Ridley and get suspended for gambling. And we're still not going to win the division. We're going to be a 7-10 ball club, and it's going to rely on how good Christian Watson can catch a football.
Then who's winning the division? Because Chicago's still got problems, and Minnesota choked every game last year. So
it's still going to be Minnesota. I still think it's going to be Minnesota, and it's going to be by a long shot.
It's possible.
It's possible.
To be fair, the Vikings receiver core did get better, so they got
Jordan Addison. Oh my God! You thought Aaron Rodgers leaving was going to help the Packers draft a first-round wide receiver? No, never. Absolutely not. We can't do that because we're the Green Bay Packers, and we think all wide receiving talent comes outside of the first round. We drafted defensive help, line help, and a tight end because Big Bobby T went to the Bears. It's not going to help when your offense relies on Aaron Jones, Christian Watson, and Romeo Doubs. That's about it. Oh, and A.J. Dillon. Can't forget the quad father, by the way. Yeah. But that's about it.
But you know what? Who needs receivers when you don't even know if your quarterback can throw it to them? So we don't know what Jordan Love is going to bring because he's barely played over 3 years. And the one time he did, his parents were sitting on like the roof of Arrowhead Stadium.
It's okay. Sean Clifford's going to be a starting quarterback by week 5, and all will be forgiven.
We'll see what happens. And Tristan, we will definitely have you on again once we get closer to the NFL season. Tristan Biesel, thanks for joining us here on Sports Speak.
No worries. Glad to be on.
That'll wrap things up for episode 139 of Sports Speak. Stay tuned for more. Follow us on Twitter at Sports Speak Live. Until next time, I'm Eddie Kalegi.
And I'm Tim Moore. Giants are going 17-0 this year.
We will discuss that next time here on Sports Speak. Enjoy the rest of your week and enjoy the NBA draft.